Pitchers and catchers report today, which means it's officially baseball season. On today's show, I'm recapping what happened this offseason and what there is to look forward to for your Texas Rangers in 2023. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Monday, February 13th. Pitchers and catchers are reporting. We're going to start getting some grainy baseball photos. I am so ready for all of the grainy photos, all of the players saying they are in the best shape of their life. Like I am so ready for all of it. The Super Bowl is done. There will be some basketball and some other sports that don't matter as much as baseball, but we've made it. We've made it through the offseason. It was a fun offseason. A lot of things happened, but I wanted to thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. And the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Now we're going to break this down into 3 parts, some new faces or just the signings, basically. Some old faces gone, and just a general overview of where the Rangers stand and where it compares to seasons past. Now let's go ahead and start with those new faces. The Rangers signed 4 players. They traded for another player, but they have a few minor league signings as well and some new coaches. But let's start at the top. Obviously, the most important is Jacob deGrom, who, if you don't know, is the baddest pitcher on the mother freaking planet and has been for a very, very long time. Signed a 5-year, $185 million deal with the Texas Rangers, has a 6-year option that could make it up to $222 million. There are some different options on that, whether it vests or not. Basically, it depends on his health. So if he's healthy, then he is going to get that full $222 million. We are hoping, or even if he's mostly healthy, I mean, it's really some not insane protections. There was a lot of concern over his injuries the last couple of years. He has missed most of the last 2 seasons, did pitch the entire 2020 shortened season, finished 3rd in Cy Young voting, has multiple Cy Youngs to his name, is absolutely electric and keeps getting better despite his age. Very, very excited for him. Then we had the Rangers signing Nathan Eovaldi. 2 years, $34 million. That contract also has a vesting option with bonuses, according to Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News, that could take it all the way up to $63 million, but at minimum 2 years, $34 million for a pretty decent pitcher who's probably going to be the number 2 in this rotation. Maybe him or Martin Perez. Not entirely sure. I'm not sure the Rangers are sure at this point, but they'll figure it out anyway. Next on their list, they had Andrew Heaney, who signed a 2-year, $25 million deal with the Rangers that also has some caveats and options, which it seems like basically if he's healthy, then he could be a free agent after 1 season. If he's not, then the Rangers have him for the 2 years, $25 million. He is a Oklahoma kid, so kind of a local boy, went to Oklahoma State. Very nice lefty pitcher who had a really, really strong year in a shorter sample because of injuries with the Dodgers. And then they retained Martin Perez on a 1-year, $19.65 million qualifying offer, the most he's made by far in his career. And they also traded for Jake Odorizzi, a starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. They sent over, we'll get into that in the next part, but basically they brought in 5 starting pitchers. 5. They could have let Martin Perez walk, and for a minute there I thought they were going to, but they signed him to the qualifying offer, which is maybe more than he would have made on the open market for one really, really great year. Granted, it was a fantastic year, and I've talked a lot this offseason about how I think it's not a fluke. He had a 5-WAR season, according to Baseball Reference, a sub-3 ERA, over 195 innings. He was just absolutely phenomenal. I don't know if he's necessarily going to repeat that exactly next year, but I think he's a really darn good pitcher, and he is going to be like this, closer to this than the old version of Martin Perez, which the Rangers signed for 1 year, $4 million last year in March, and I just kind of shrugged my shoulders at it because I thought it wasn't going to be that big a deal. Turns out it was one of the biggest deals. Some minor league signings who I think will probably play a factor in the Rangers. They signed Danny Duffy, Ian Kennedy, Reyes Maranta. All of those guys are going to be relievers. Outfielders, Travis Jankowski, Clint or Jackson Frazier. They also signed Yoshi Tsutsugo, former Rays and Pirates and Dodgers first baseman, who probably isn't going to see a whole bunch of time, but is definitely someone to keep an eye on. They also signed Zach Littell. Also brought in coaches, Bruce Bochy, Mike Maddux. All of these things should get you excited about Texas Rangers baseball, the most excited that you've been in a long time, because that's where I am. I am so incredibly excited for this season. All of these names that they brought, I mean, they started with Bruce Bochy. I mean, Chris Young being able to convince Bruce Bochy to get off of his couch, hasn't managed since 2019, and it ended up being the right situation. They also bring back Mike Maddux, who not just, personally, I mean, everyone loves a little bit of nostalgia, and Maddux was the pitching coach for the Rangers when they had their best teams and for the longest time. And I'm glad that he's back. He's done a really good job at the other stops that he's been at for, I believe, 1 year with the Nationals, and then for most of that time with the Cardinals. Has always lived in Dallas, so happy to come and coach where he lives, closer to his family, a little bit less travel. That is definitely an added bonus. And also Bruce freaking Bochy, a 3-time World Series champion manager. As much as I really liked Chris Woodward, he's not here anymore. And in the front office, we have Chris Young, who's not a new face, but he is new, taking over since I believe it was August when the Rangers made all of those changes that were, we don't have to get back into that, but Chris Young is the new head honcho in charge of all things front office. They also brought in Dayton Moore, who is a longtime GM of the Kansas City Royals. He is a special assistant. He was the GM that signed Chris Young to his final professional contract, also helped him win a World Series with Kansas City as a player. Also, recently, in the last week, Ian Kinsler has been brought in as a special assistant to the GM. Very, very excited to have him back on board. One of the greatest Rangers in franchise history. Being a part of this team, being up there in a special assistant with him and Michael Young, just knowing that they're there makes me really, really happy. I know they've tried to get Beltre and convince him to take that kind of a role, but Beltre's not coming back there. If he did, then my heart might just explode with how happy I would be. But Beltre's happy being retired and being a dad, and that's awesome for him. Some other changes that I just noticed today, they happened, I believe, 3 days ago. The Rangers have some new numbers. Ezequiel Duran wore number 70 last season. He will now wear number 20. Bubba Thompson wore 65 last year. He will now wear number 8. Now, those aren't incredibly significant, but I think they are at least marginally significant. It kind of shows that, okay, these guys are probably here to stay. It was going to happen, I think, at some point this year or some point in the near future, but it's kind of a sign of like, all right, the Rangers believe in these guys. There's a reason they didn't sign a left fielder. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but they believe in both of these guys playing a big role on this team. They gave them their big boy numbers because they are here to stay. Last year, they weren't so sure how long they would be here to stay, if they were going to be going up and down, but I think this is kind of a sign of like, hey, we believe in these guys, and we think they're going to play a big part in the Major League team this year, so we're not going to give them some weird old numbers like 70 and 65 that nobody ever wears. So coming up, we're going to look at some of the faces that are gone, some faces that are still potentially on the market and might be worth a look at, and some changes in general. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super duper easy to use. So you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained as well. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance for a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports partner of the NBA. Now, Let's take a look at who is out, who is no longer with the Texas Rangers. There are quite a few players who are gone. Some momentarily, actually just one of them momentarily, but most of them it seems like are gone to stay, or at least free agents that are almost assuredly not signing. We'll start with the best one. Matt Moore is still a free agent on the market. I don't see the Rangers signing him if they haven't at this point. It means that I think they feel comfortable about the options they have in the bullpen. I think somebody will sign Matt Moore to a multi-year deal. I'm really surprised that nobody has at this point. I mean, he had a really, really good season last year, and I don't see why he wasn't more highly sought out in the free agent market, but that's neither here nor there. Also gone is Cole Calhoun. The Rangers declined his team option for this upcoming season. Had just really, honestly, pretty terrible year this year. He had a really good month of May where he was absolutely fantastic. One of the hottest hitters, if not the hottest hitter on the team in the month of May, and then was just pretty much trash for the rest of the season, to put it very harshly. I don't know if somebody else is going to pick him up because he had just such a bad year that the Rangers just really could not play him towards the end of the season. They also lost Charlie Culberson, who has signed a deal with the Rays, which is a bummer for the clubhouse vibes. But again, the Rangers have a lot of backup shortstops on this roster and a lot of guys who I think can hit just a little bit better than Culberson, but best of luck to him with the Rays. Colby Allard is gone in the Jake Odorizzi trade. Brett Martin is just gone for the season because he had season-ending injury. I believe it was a shoulder injury. Eli White is gone, traded to the Atlanta Braves for cash considerations. Mason Englert, one of the top right-handed pitching prospects in the system, a local Forney kid who did really, really well at AA, is gone in the Rule 5 draft to the Tigers. That was a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't sure that somebody would pick him up and probably keep him on the roster. He might end up still coming back, but I think he is probably going to be gone for the Rangers in their system. Dennis Santana, the relief pitcher who had a really up and down season last year, really great in the first half, overworked, and does not have any minor league options, so the Rangers traded him to Atlanta for cash considerations. Stop me if you have heard that one before. Also gone, coaches. Chris Woodward, gone in August. If you checked out at the midway point last season, or after about a month, then honestly can't say that I super blame you. Pitching coaches, Doug Mathis and Brandon Segura. Both of those guys were the co-pitching coaches. They were both parted ways with, and the Rangers brought in Mike Maddux. I think those guys did a fine job. The Rangers didn't have the best pitching staff last year. Actually, pretty not great in general last year, and I don't think that the Rangers struggling pitching-wise was necessarily their fault. I think they definitely had a big hand in helping Martin Perez go and have that breakout year. The Rangers got some really, really good stuff out of John Gray when he was healthy, but he only pitched 127 innings last year. I mean, getting what they did out of Glenn Otto was really, really solid. He's not a guy who I thought would be able to be a confident starter at the big league level for that amount of time. But he had a 4.64 ERA in 27 starts, just over 135 innings. That was honestly solid. I don't think he's going to be a part of the rotation moving forward, but I do think he could play a key role in that bullpen as a really nasty multi-inning reliever. And as for the bullpen, I mean, the Rangers got some really great stuff out of several relievers. I mean, Dennis Santana really blew up towards the back half of the season, same with Brett Martin, but I think a lot of that was overused. Taylor Hearn was not great in the rotation, but really had his moments down the stretch. And Brock Burke and Matt Moore were absolutely phenomenal out of the bullpen last year. Both of them had a sub-2 ERA in over 70 innings for each of them. Burke did it in 82 and a third innings. Both those guys were just incredibly, incredibly valuable. And I think Burke probably should have gotten a little bit more love in the Rookie of the Year voting. I don't know that he got any votes at all, but 90 Ks and 82 and a third innings and a sub-2 ERA as a reliever was fantastic. An ERA plus of an even 200. He was fantastic last year, and I really don't think that he got nearly enough credit. Also, front office, John Daniels is gone also to the Tampa Bay Rays. He is reuniting with Charlie Culberson. Maybe he had an impact on that signing, just vouching for the guy that Culberson is and the positional versatility, which the Rays very, very much love, and maybe some insurance if Wander Franco should suffer another injury this year. They also lost second and third round picks this year. Both of those are from signing restricted free agents. They also lost their second and third round picks in this most recent draft, and it turned out okay, I think, so far. They got Kumar Rocker and Brock Porter in the fourth round. Maybe they'll do something similar this year. Not entirely sure, because they will be picking seventh in this draft, so not quite as much money as when they were picking third in the 2022 draft, but still definitely something to keep an eye on. But, I mean, you're going to give up a second-round pick to sign Jacob deGrom. If you've already given up your second-round pick, then I think that's why the Rangers were the ones to sign Nate Eovaldi, because they had such a high pick that they couldn't lose a first-round pick to sign Nate Eovaldi, and they already lost their second round, so it's like, yeah, sure, he's pretty darn good, so we'll give up a third-round pick, and I think that's why they didn't have as much competition, because some of the other teams, if they had lower picks in that first round, they would have to give up a first-round pick to sign Nate Eovaldi, and other teams weren't quite as willing to do that. But when it's a third-round pick, then he's definitely much more worth the risk, and it's a much lower risk. These aren't necessarily losses, but ones that I think could have been pretty substantial gains if the Rangers had signed them. The only free agents that they really, really missed out on that I look back and think really, really would have liked to have those guys are two left fielders, Michael Conforto and Joey Gallo. Conforto signed a larger deal than I think the Rangers were comfortable with giving with San Francisco, after San Francisco had the whole debacle of missing out on both Carlos Correa and Arson Judge. Really embarrassing for them, but I think they still ended up having a nice season. But I really would have loved to see Michael Conforto in the Rangers left field. They also missed out on reuniting with my large adult son, Joseph Nicholas Gallo. He signed a one-year deal with the Twins. I think could have been a really, really nice bounce-back candidate. Should do really well in Minnesota. And I like what the Rangers are doing in left field, but I still think that Joey Gallo could have been a really nice signing. My own personal biases acknowledged. Now, coming up, we're going to look at the overall, how much money the Rangers spent, where it puts them, and why they haven't been there in such a long time. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you have got to try yourself a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. And if you're like me, you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then man, I have got just the thing for you. You have got to try yourself a Built Bar. What makes them so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That is right, real chocolate. And I'm not sure how Built does it, but they make them taste like candy bars, even though they're protein bars. They are still amazing macros. And what's even better, they are super healthy for you. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now you don't need to wait around to get a box for years when you're talking about going to Built.com. Now you can pick them up at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. So go get yourself a box of Built Bars. You have got to try them. You'll thank me later. Now, let's take a look at what the Rangers did overall in this offseason and a little bit at last offseason too, to kind of put this in context. The total money that the Rangers spent, well, it could vary, but it's a minimum of $263.65 million. That is just talking about major league guaranteed contract. That is not factoring in how much they are paying Bruce Bochy, which I imagine is going to be quite a sizable amount because he is a surefire Hall of Fame manager with 3 freaking rings and still probably also very good. I mean, Tony La Russa was a guy with arguably similar qualifications, but a little more washed and had not managed in baseball in a significantly longer time. But I think this is a much, much better deal, obviously. And whatever they are paying Mike Maddux, which I don't know what that is. I can't imagine it's a whole lot of money, especially compared to, how much, Jacob deGrom is going to make. But still, that is a whole lot of money. The maximum they could spend if these vesting options vest in deGrom and Eovaldi and also Andrew Heaney stays. That is a maximum of $329.65 million in guaranteed major league contracts. And that is committed, not spent on this year. If you're looking at what they're spending this year, the payroll is at $179.3 million. I believe that is ninth. Let me double check. I believe that is top 10 in payroll, and it puts them at, let's see, I think they were 8th. No, they are 9th. They are behind the Houston Astros and ahead of the San Francisco Giants. The last time the Rangers were top 10 in payroll was 2017. That year, they were third place with $178.4 million in contract guarantee. That was a really, really weird year if you're looking at the top end of payrolls 2017. That was 4 of the top 5 payroll teams had losing records, which is not a normal thing, but is something that happened that year. The Dodgers were the only one in the top 5 with a winning record, and obviously they had 104 wins that year. The Tigers were second. They had 64 wins. The Rangers had 78 wins. I mean, the Giants had a losing season. The Mets had a losing season. And then at 6th place, the Red Sox had a 93-win season. So the Rangers were ahead of the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Cubs that year, which was just kind of a weird place to be. And they have not been that high since I looked all the way back to 2015. Third place was definitely the highest. So this is a little bit higher than that year. I mean, if you're accounting for inflation, I mean, mathematically, it's worth a little bit less than what they were paying that year. But I think that is kind of what started this whole rebuild thing and this just unwillingness to pay a lot of money. And that was kind of an embarrassing season. The Rangers finished with a losing record. They traded Yu Darvish, and then the next year they traded Cole Hamels. They missed the playoffs for the first time in 3 years or whatever it was, which it was one of the worst seasons they had outside of the just incredibly injury-plagued season in 2014. But yeah, if you look at last offseason, they obviously spent significantly less than last offseason. In 2022, that offseason they committed, I guess, December-ish, and also heading into March of 2022, they committed $589.7 million over the next 10 seasons, so an average of $59 million for the next 10 seasons, which is a whole lot of money. Their payroll last year was at $149.3 million, 15th place, which is still below league average for, again, a team in one of the biggest markets, one of the most valuable markets in Major League Baseball, that had a new stadium, that had a lot of reason to get fans excited and potentially spending money, and should probably be at least in the top 10. I think 9th place is at least where they should be, even though they are coming off of all these losing seasons. But I mean, you look at where this team is, and you look at where the farm system is, and you look at where the product on the field is. This is the best roster the Rangers have had since 2017. I think it's even maybe a little bit better than that 2017 roster. I mean, the rotation is phenomenal. That year's rotation, I mean, Cole Hamels and Yu Darvish both really just did not live up to the billing. I think the Rangers' best pitcher that year, I'd feel fairly comfortable in saying that it was Andrew Kashner, who had a sub 3.5 ERA in 167-ish innings, which was just such a weird year. I mean, Martin Perez led the team in innings pitched and had an ERA in the 480s. The Rangers missed a lot of time from Adrian Beltre. That was, I think, the first year that the Rangers did not have Prince Fielder. Mike Napoli was there. It was the year that Jonathan Lucroy was trash and just decided to kind of quit, even though Robinson Chirinos was great. Like, this is the most excitement I've had heading into a season. And obviously we didn't know all that was going to fall the way it did heading into the 2017 season. Thought, okay, well, Rangers just got bounced, and I believe they were swept in 2016 by the Blue Jays in just one of the weirder series, the more confusing series that Yu Darvish and Cole Hamels were both just absolutely lit up, and the Rangers offense didn't do anything. You're like, okay, well, the Rangers have Jonathan Lucroy, who had been one of the best catchers in baseball. Elvis Andrus was coming into his own, had probably one of his best career seasons that year. I mean, you got Rugi, who was an up-and-comer. You had Gallo and Mazzara in the system, who, Gallo had a great year that year at third base, and Mazzara was, that was one of his better years, but still not great. But still, everything just kind of went wrong, and I haven't felt that much optimism about this team since then. I mean, the resources are there, managers there, the rotation is there, the stars are in place, the farm system is as good as it's been, I think, since the Cole Hamels trade back in 2015. Like, there is a lot of reason for optimism about this baseball team. And it's not just because pitchers and catchers are reporting today. It's not just because football's finally done and I can start to see the sunshine and go outside without a heavy winter coat every single day. But I think there's just really a lot of reasons for optimism about this team. Definitely the most excited I've been heading into a season since starting this podcast before the 2019 season. This is a really exciting baseball team, and probably isn't going to win a World Series this year, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There is going to be a reason to watch every single day, and especially every fifth day with Jacob freaking deGrom. I mean, two of the best middle infielders in all of baseball are on the Rangers. The Rangers have this reigning Silver Slugger at first base. They've got some fun youngsters around the outfield, and Josh Young playing every day at third base. Oh, and don't even get me started on the catching tandem that the Rangers have in Jonah Heim and Mitch Garver. And both those guys are absolutely incredible and really slept on league-wide as very, very good catchers and one of the better catching tandems in all of Major League Baseball. Not to mention Adolis Garcia, who is not only good, but also fun, and brings a lot of excitement and energy to this club. So there's a lot of reason for optimism, not just that it's finally time for pitchers and catchers to report. I am so ready for this week. By the way, we are going back to 5 episodes a week starting today. So if you are also just raring to go for this baseball season, I'll be here every single day. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.